Hello everyone. Tonight we dive into the mysterious world of Atlantis, a lost civilization whispered about in legends, said to have held secrets far beyond our understanding. A city of light and wisdom, swallowed by the sea, or perhaps hidden, waiting to be found again. Was it real? Was it myth? Or could there be a truth buried beneath the waves? A truth that still echoes through time. So get comfortable, let the world around you fade, and allow your mind to drift where history and dreams become one. And before we begin, if you truly enjoy my work, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join me on this journey through the forgotten corners of our world. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's uncover the untold mystery of the Atlantis Civilization. The sea is calm tonight, its dark surface glistening like glass beneath a sky full of sleeping stars. But somewhere beneath those gentle waves, far below the reach of sunlight and the pull of the tides, lies a story older than memory itself, a story whispered by the currents, a story of a city that once shone brighter than gold, a city swallowed whole by the sea. They called it Atlantis. No one knows when the first whispers began. Some say the philosopher Plato heard them, carried across centuries from the temples of Egypt, from priests who still remembered what the world had lost. They spoke of an island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a land of gleaming white stone and crystal towers, where the air hummed with energy and the streets flowed with clear water drawn from hidden springs of power. Imagine it, the light of 1,000 torches shimmering on marble, the sound of cascading fountains echoing through vast courtyards, a city of scholars, builders, and dreamers, where the line between man and God blurred with every invention. They say the Atlanteans lived in harmony with the elements, water, fire, air and earth. Mastering energies that we still barely understand, some claimed their temples floated above the ocean. Others believed their palaces were carved from living stone that pulsed with the heartbeat of its own. It was paradise, but paradise never lasts. The deeper you listen to the legend, the more you feel its sorrow, that haunting sense of something beautiful lost forever. Because Atlantis, they say, fell not by war, but by pride. The gods had given them wisdom, but wisdom turned to arrogance. Knowledge became greed, and as their hearts darkened, the sea began to stir. The old stories tell of a night when the moon burned red and the earth trembled beneath their feet. Winds screamed through the towers, waves rose higher than mountains, and the ocean, calm for 1,000 years, roared awake. The city of Atlantis sank beneath the water in a single, endless breath. Imagine standing there in those final moments, the air filled with thunder and the cries of people watching their world break apart. The marble cracking, the towers falling, the light dimming, and then silence. All that remained was the sea, vast, endless, and cold. But legends have a way of surviving even after the world forgets. Some say that on quiet nights, when the waves are still, you can hear the faint chime of Atlantis beneath the water, a bell from a sunken temple calling out through time. Others claim to have seen strange lights deep below the surface, glimmers of energy that move like souls searching for home. Maybe it's just imagination, or maybe Atlantis never truly vanished. Perhaps the city still sleeps beneath the waves, waiting, like a heart that hasn't stopped beating, only slowed, waiting for the right moment to rise again. And so the story begins with the endless sound of the ocean, the same sound that carried the first whispers to Plato, the same sound that has followed us through centuries of wonder. As you drift deeper into the rhythm of the waves, you start to feel it, that strange familiarity, as if you've heard this story before, not with your ears, but with your soul. Because maybe you have. Maybe once, long ago, you walked those golden streets, felt that ocean breeze, and looked up at those crystal towers gleaming against the sun. Maybe that's why the story of Atlantis still calls to us, like a dream half remembered, just beyond the edge of waking. And tonight, as the waves whisper their secrets once more, we begin to listen. The waves are quiet tonight, but beneath them, memory stirs. Where the world now sleeps in blue silence, there once rose an empire that glittered brighter than any kingdom the earth has ever known. The people of Atlantis did not begin in greatness. They were born from the meeting of two worlds, the divine and the mortal. Legend says the sea god Poseidon fell in love with a woman of the earth, Cleito, who lived upon a hill surrounded by fertile valleys and streams. From their union came 10 sons, 10 rulers, who would divide Atlantis into kingdoms all bound by one heart, one law, one dream. Under the eldest son Atlas, the island flourished. His name became the soul of the realm, Atlantis, the land of Atlas. The gods blessed them with strength, wisdom, and a spark of something extraordinary, an understanding of the earth itself. They carved canals that shimmered like liquid glass, circled their cities with golden walls, and built bridges so vast they seemed to touch the horizon. From the air, Atlantis looked like a spiral. Rings of land and sea coiling around a sacred mountain crowned by a temple of white and orichalcum, the lost metal of the gods. At its peak, a great crystal burned with soft light, pulsing like a living heart. Some said it drew power from the ocean currents. Others whispered it contained the memory of creation itself. Their temples sang with energy, not the crackle of flame, but a hum, low and steady, like the breath of the earth. They learned to shape sound, to bend light, to heal with vibration. Theirs was not magic, but mastery, the kind born of harmony with nature, not dominance over it. And their wisdom reached far beyond the stars. Atlantean scholars charted the heavens, reading the dance of constellations as though they were words written by the gods. They believed everything was connected, the sea, the sky, the spirit, each one reflecting the other like endless mirrors. It was an age of beauty, when peace flowed as freely as the water that surrounded them. Children played in marble courtyards, merchants crossed silver bridges, and priests sang hymns that rose like mist over the glowing canals. But what is paradise without the shadow that follows it? As Atlantis grew in power, so too did its hunger. The outer kingdoms began to envy the shining heart of the empire. Gold and knowledge became measures of worth, and somewhere between creation and pride, they forgot the whisper of the sea that had once guided them. Atlas, wise and steady, watched his people build wonders beyond imagination, flying ships that hovered on magnetic winds, gardens that floated in the sky, temples lined with crystals that hummed with light. But he also watched as arrogance crept in, like a slow tide in the night. The Atlanteans began to believe themselves untouchable, gods among men, and the gods, it said, began to turn away. Still, in this moment, in the rise before the fall, Atlantis was a miracle, a civilization that bridged heaven and earth, light and water, spirit and stone, a place where knowledge was worship and beauty was law. Even now, when you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The hum of crystal towers, the rhythm of waves against golden walls, the faint laughter of a people who believed their light would never dim. But all light fades. and every empire that rises must someday face the weight of its own shadow. For now, though, as the waves shimmer under a moonlight, Atlantis still stands in all its glory, a city alive with wonder, and soon we will see what made it fall. The night deepens, the sea darkens, and somewhere beneath that vast, endless silence, a light once glowed brighter than any star. Atlantis was not remembered for its temples or its gold, but for something far greater, something the world was never meant to understand. They had mastered the hidden language of the earth itself. The Atlanteans called it the breath of the world. It was said to be an invisible current that flowed through all things, stone, water, wind, even thought. Where we see division, they saw connection, and through that connection, they built wonders that now exist only in legend. Imagine towers of pure crystal, rising like frozen lightning, drawing energy not from fire or metal, but from the very pulse of the planet. They learned to channel frequencies, harmonies of vibration that could lift stone, heal wounds, and even store memory. Each temple was a tuning fork, each crystal a living library. The great Atlantean engineers were not builders, they were listeners. They listened to the hum of the earth, the tone of the sea, the resonance of stars. And from those songs they shaped technology that felt more like magic than invention. Some say their cities floated, held aloft by invisible fields of sound. Others claim their ships moved without sails or oars, gliding smoothly above the water, guided by the magnetic lines that stretched across the planet like unseen rivers. At the heart of it all were the crystals of fire, colossal structures buried deep beneath the central temple. They pulsed with radiant energy, glowing like hearts beneath the city's skin. The crystals could power entire districts, and when perfectly aligned, they resonated with the frequency of the Earth's core itself. It was energy without flame, power without destruction. A gift so pure, so delicate that even a slight imbalance could cause chaos. And that was the danger. The priests of Atlantis warned against using this energy carelessly. They said it required balance, the harmony of spirit and science, wisdom and humility. But as the empire expanded, ambition drowned out the old voices. The people began to experiment. They wanted more light, more power, more control. In secret chambers, engineers and mystics tried to merge the crystal's energy with the human mind. Some succeeded, but at a cost. There were whispers of strange experiments, of people who could see across time, who could move objects with thought, who could hear the sea speak back. But the more they reached, the more unstable the crystals became. Small tremors began to shake the city, subtle at first, then stronger. The energy fields flickered, lights dimmed, and shadows danced in places where light should have been. Still they pushed forward, because they believed they were ascending, becoming more than human. One night, deep within the central temple, a surge of light erupted from the crystals. The ground split, the air burned, and the hum that had once soothed the city turned into a scream, and then silence. After that night, the high priest sealed the inner chambers. The crystals still glowed, but dimmer, weaker, as though mourning what had been done. The people whispered that the balance had been broken, that the power meant to connect all things was now unravelling them. Even now, some claim that when lightning strikes the ocean, it's the ancient machines of Atlantis calling out from the deep, fragments of energy searching for the harmony they once knew. The forgotten technology of Atlantis wasn't just lost, it was buried on purpose. Because those who understood it realized that knowledge without restraint could destroy not just a city, but the world itself. And so the light of Atlantis began to fade, not from age, but from the weight of its own brilliance. The sea remembers everything. It carries whispers of every storm, every secret, every empire that dared to defy the gods. And somewhere beneath miles of cold, silent water, the ocean still remembers the night Atlantis fell. It began not with a roar, but with a tremor, a subtle quiver in the earth, so faint that only the temple seers noticed. They felt it in their bones, a deep vibration that made the sacred crystals hum out of tune. The priests called it the disharmony of the world. The people called it nonsense, but the sea was already stirring. By then Atlantis had grown vast and proud. Its fleet stretched across oceans, its colonies spanned continents. The people believed themselves divine. They no longer worshipped the gods, they imitated them. They harnessed the fire crystals for war, turned energy into weaponry, and built towers that reached too high. The more power they drew, the more unstable the land became. The air itself shimmered with strain, the sky rippled with strange light. Animals grew restless, the tides refused to obey. Then came the storms. Winds screamed across the canals, tearing through the golden gates. The once calm seas rose in fury, waves swallowing ships whole before they could flee the harbour. Lightning cracked open the sky, striking the temples that had once glowed with pure light. The crystal towers shattered like glass, their hums turning into screams. At the heart of the city, in the grand temple of Atlas, the high priests gathered around the central crystal, their last hope. They prayed, not for salvation, but for balance. If they could realign the energy, they believed, they could still save the island. But it was too late. The ground split open with a sound that no one alive could ever forget, a deep rolling thunder that came from beneath, not above. The island shook, tilting as the sea rushed inward. Entire districts crumbled, statues toppled, and the sacred mountain, once a beacon of light, began to sink. The priests chanted until the water filled their throats. Their prayers dissolved into the roar of collapsing stone. And yet, in those final moments, the city was beautiful. They said the towers glowed brighter than ever before. A final burst of light so brilliant it could be seen from distant shores. Some who survived claimed it wasn't destruction they saw, but ascension, the city returning to the realm it came from. Then the light vanished. The waves closed over the last cries of Atlantis, and the sea became still once more. In the silence that followed, the survivors, few and scattered, washed up on distant lands. Some found refuge on the shores of Egypt, others in the mountains of South America. They carried fragments of memory, stories, symbols, bits of knowledge that would one day seed new civilizations. They spoke of a lost homeland swallowed by the ocean, and though the world changed, the story never truly died. Some nights sailors still tell of strange lights beneath the waves, or phantom bells ringing from the deep. They say the sea glows where Atlantis once stood, as if the city still breathes, asleep, not dead. Perhaps the fall of Atlantis was not a punishment, but a cycle, a reminder that even the brightest minds can drown in their own light. And so, beneath the endless waves, the Golden Empire sleeps, waiting, dreaming, remembering, and the ocean keeps its secret. When the waves finally stilled and the world grew quiet again, the ocean floor was littered with silence. Atlantis, the jewel of the world, was gone, but not all was lost. In the aftermath of the great cataclysm, when thunder still rumbled in the distance and the scene's skies glowed red from the fires of the deep, small groups of survivors drifted on broken ships and fragments of wood, carried by the mercy of the current. They had no home, only memory. These were the last children of Atlantis, the keepers of its wisdom, its language, its light. And though their empire had fallen, something within them refused to die. The old texts say they were guided by the stars, constellations only the Atlanteans could read. Their navigators spoke to the heavens, following a pattern that pointed not north or south, but homeward. And slowly, through storm and silence, they reached distant shores. One group landed upon the banks of the Nile, where the river mirrored the canals they once knew. The people of that land called them strangers, yet listened as they spoke of the sun and the sea as one spirit. From them, new temples rose, tall, geometric, aligned to the stars. And though time would rename them, their origin remained hidden within the stone. Another group crossed the ocean westward, finding mountains where clouds touched the earth. There they taught the art of carving stories into stone, and how to raise temples that spoke with the sky. In the Andes, echoes of their symbols still survive: spirals, suns, and eyes that see beyond time. Further still, some sailed east, to islands that shimmered like green jewels in the morning light. They carried with them fragments of crystal, the last remnants of Atlantis' power. In the temples of India, in the myths of Lemuria, in the chants of Polynesia, their memory flickers still. Everywhere they went, they were called by different names: gods, sky people, sages. But they were none of these. They were simply the remnants of a world that had fallen too far. Their purpose was not conquest, but remembrance. They sought to rebuild balance, to teach harmony once more between man and nature, spirit and earth. They became the gardeners of civilization, planting seeds of wisdom that would bloom centuries later. The Atlanteans spoke of a symbol, the spiral. They said it represented not power, but cycles, creation, destruction, and renewal. Atlantis had reached the height of its spiral and fallen. Now the survivors began the long, slow turn upward again. And yet, even among them, the past clung like shadow. Some remembered too much of the machines, the crystals, the hum of endless energy. They tried to rebuild what was lost. And for a moment, the earth trembled again. But those attempts failed, buried by time before they could do more harm. The sea had taken Atlantis once. It would not allow it to rise again so soon. Still, in every land they touched, a memory was left. In pyramids, ziggurats, and myths that speak of gods descending from the sky. And though the names changed, the story remained the same. A great civilization destroyed by its own brilliance, scattering its children across the world like sparks from a dying flame. Tonight, when you look at the stars, remember, the same constellations that guided them still hang above you, and perhaps, somewhere in your soul, a part of that ancient longing still stirs, the quiet memory of a place that once was home. Because the Atlanteans did not vanish, they became us. The ocean keeps many secrets, but some are not made of stone or light, they are made of sound. Long after the towers of Atlantis fell, long after the last survivor set foot upon a new shore, something remained beneath the waves, something that still speaks. It is not a voice exactly, it is more like a hum, a resonance carried through the water, too deep for the ear but felt by the heart. Divers who venture too far sometimes say they hear it. A low vibration, rhythmic and calm like a heartbeat buried under miles of silence. They call it the song of the deep. But the old texts call it something else, the language of Atlantis. Before their fall, the Atlanteans believed that words were not just sounds but frequencies, vibrations that shaped the world itself. Every word, every tone, every pattern of speech carried energy. To them, language was creation, A perfectly spoken phrase could heal the body, calm a storm, or bring light to darkness. Their scholars studied not letters, but tones. Their writings were not alphabets, but spirals, each symbol representing a sound so pure that it resonated through stone and water alike. They said that the universe itself was born from one great sound, the first word of creation, and that by understanding its echo, one could speak to the very soul of the world. The Atlanteans called it the deep language, and it was their most sacred art. Only the priest-keepers were allowed to use it, and even they did so sparingly, for they believed that a single misplaced tone could fracture reality. When the city fell, the great libraries were swallowed whole. But sound cannot drown. It travels endlessly, carrying memory where paper cannot. And so somewhere beneath the sea, the language still lives, scattered through vibration, waiting for ears that can hear beyond the human. As the survivors journeyed across the world, they took fragments of this language with them, chants, songs, symbols carved into stone. Over time, these fragments became myths, prayers, mantras. The same sacred tones appear in temples oceans apart, though the builders never met. A hidden thread connects them, the voice of Atlantis speaking softly through the ages. Even now, when monks chant in unison, when ancient hymns rise in echoing cathedrals, when the ocean hums against the cliffs, you can feel it. That same vibration, old as time, deep as the sea. It is not the words that matter, but the frequency beneath them, the pulse that aligns everything living into harmony. Some researchers once recorded strange underwater sounds, deep rhythmic pulses, repeating at perfect intervals. Machines could not identify them. Whales would not go near. The signal seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Perhaps it was nothing, or perhaps the ruins still remember their own voice. The language of the deep is more than speech. It is memory, emotion, and energy intertwined. To hear it is to remember who we once were. To speak it is to awaken what has slept for thousands of years. And maybe that is why it remains hidden. Because humanity is not yet ready to remember. The ocean hums tonight, soft and steady. If you listen closely, truly listen, you might hear the faint rhythm beneath the waves. It isn't a song, nor a warning. It's something older, something waiting. The same sound that once guided an empire. The same tone that built Atlantis, and the same that destroyed it. The language of the deep has never gone silent. It has only been waiting for someone who remembers how to listen. The ocean has a strange way of keeping time. It doesn't count the years, it simply waits. And beneath its endless blue veil, the ruins of Atlantis still sleep, patient and cold, wrapped in silence older than civilization itself. But sometimes the sea remembers. There are places scattered across the world, far apart yet eerily alike, where stone meets water in impossible ways, places where divers descend and feel as though eyes are watching from the dark, places where geometry and gravity seem to whisper of something not meant to be forgotten. One such place lies off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, a long, straight path of colossal stones, perfectly aligned, vanishing into the deep. They call it the Bimini Road. Some say it's natural, a quirk of geology, but others hear the whisper of Atlantis in its rhythm. The blocks fit too cleanly, the edges too precise, the design too deliberate. It feels less like a ruin, and more like a memory made solid. Far across the world, near the shores of Japan, another mystery lies beneath the waves. The Yonaguni Monument. massive terraces and steps carved into solid rock, each one shaped with a precision that defies time. Pillars, arches and walls lie hidden under the current, covered in coral, yet perfectly balanced, as if built for gods, not men. Local fishermen found it by accident. When divers explored it, some swore they felt vibrations echoing through the stone, faint but steady, like a heartbeat still pulsing beneath the sand. Could these be the outposts of Atlantis? Fragments of a lost empire scattered by the sea? Or are they the reflections of Atlantis, built by those who survived and remembered what once was? In the depths near Cuba, explorers using sonar have found the outline of an entire city. Streets, pyramids and domes buried beneath silt. No one has reached it yet, but the images are clear, a pattern too intentional to ignore. It lies exactly where the old maps once marked the western gate of Atlantis. And then there are the strange lights. At night, deep-sea cameras sometimes capture faint glows, moving through the ruins, blinking like distant stars. Scientists call it bioluminescence, but those who've been there tell a different story. They say the lights move with rhythm, not randomness, like a language written in the dark. Perhaps the remnants of Atlantis are not dead stone, but living memory, energy woven into the very fabric of the ocean. When the currents shift just right, they awaken for a moment, and then fall silent again. In one expedition, a diver reported hearing music, not from his equipment, but through the water itself, a faint harmonic vibration that made his chest tremble. He said it was beautiful and terrifying. When he surfaced, he wept without knowing why. Maybe that is what the ruins are meant to do, not to be found, but to be felt. Because Atlantis, in truth, was never about location. It was about resonance, a civilization that lived in tune with the world until the song turned against them. And now the ruins are not simply reminders of the past. They are warnings, humming beneath the waves, waiting for us to listen. The ocean hides many things, but not forever. Each passing year, the sand shifts, the currents change, and more of the lost world emerges. One day the sea will give back what it took, and when it does, we will see not ruins, but reflection of what we once were and what we might become again. There are moments in history when myth and memory blur, when what we call legend feels less like fantasy and more like something we've simply forgotten. And deep beneath the sea, among the ruins of Atlantis, one legend burns brighter than the rest. They called them the crystals of power. The heart of Atlantis was not gold or fire, but light, pure living light drawn from the earth itself. In the centre of the city stood the Temple of Illumination, a vast structure of white stone and silver veins, crowned by a crystal that glowed like a captured star. It was said to pulse in rhythm with the planet, a living conduit between the heavens above and the waters below. These were not ordinary gems. They were carved from the bones of the world and fragments of a material so rare, so resonant, that it could hold and amplify energy without end. Atlantean scholars called them living stones. They believed the crystals were alive, not with thought but with awareness, attuned to the emotions of those who wielded them. When held in harmony, the crystals could heal, power machines, and illuminate entire cities. The canals glowed blue at night, the towers shimmered with soft luminescence, and the people walked through streets lit by pure energy, silent, endless, and clean. There was no smoke, no flame, no hunger for fuel. Atlantis thrived on resonance, not consumption, but power has a way of testing the soul. At first, the crystals were used for creation, to communicate across vast distances, to channel music and thought, to align crops with the rhythms of the earth. Then came the experiments. The priest discovered that when two crystals were tuned together, they could magnify energy beyond measure. The scholars called it the awakening frequency. But the moment one frequency slipped, even slightly, the harmony turned to chaos. Some believe the fall of Atlantis began not with pride, but with a single vibration out of balance. The ancient writings speak of a night when the great crystal beneath the temple began to hum uncontrollably. The light within it grew wild, flashing, pulsing, crying out like something alive in pain. The air turned electric, the ocean shuddered, and for a moment it seemed as though the entire island was breathing. The priests tried to calm it, but their chants only fed the resonance. The crystal was mirroring their fear, amplifying it. The city, built upon harmony, was destroyed by its own dissonance. When the ocean rose to claim them, the crystals fell silent. But silence does not mean death. There are stories, strange, quiet stories, of divers who have seen soft light glimmering beneath the waves, deep in the trenches where no sun can reach. They say the light moves slowly, pulsing in patterns like a heartbeat, and when they swim closer, their equipment flickers, their minds fill with visions of cities, of music, of faces that do not belong to this world. Some call it hallucination, others call it memory. Perhaps the crystals of power are still alive, still waiting. They were born of the earth, how could the sea destroy them? Maybe they sleep scattered across the ocean floor, dreaming in silence, waiting for the day humanity learns balance once more. But if we ever find them again, will we use them as the Atlanteans once did, to heal and enlighten? Or will we repeat the same song of dissonance that ended them? The sea hums faintly tonight, a vibration you can almost feel in your chest, gentle, steady, ancient. Perhaps it's the heartbeat of the world, or perhaps it's the crystals of Atlantis calling home. Time has swallowed empires, rewritten stories, and buried memories beneath stone and sea. Yet somehow, the spirit of Atlantis has never truly vanished. It lingers, not in the ocean's depths, but in the quiet corners of the human soul. Because Atlantis was never just a place. It was an idea, a vision of harmony between nature and knowledge, between the seen and unseen, between what is possible and what is wise. The survivors of that lost empire carried more than relics or stories. They carried the echo of its essence. Wherever they went, they built reflections of what they remembered. Temples aligned to the stars, cities built in circles and spirals, laws bound by balance, not greed. And over centuries those fragments grew into the seeds of every great civilization that followed. Yet as the memory faded into myth, Atlantis became something else. A mirror. It reflected our longing for perfection and our fear of losing it. Philosophers called it the symbol of human potential, the dream of what we could become if wisdom guided power. Mystics called it a realm between worlds, a dimension of spirit where knowledge is light. And seekers, even now, look for it not in maps, but in meditation, believing that Atlantis lies within the deep waters of consciousness itself. There are whispers that its spirit never drowned, that when the sea swallowed the city, the energy of its people, their thoughts, their songs, their dreams, rose into another plane, one just beyond the veil of our perception. They say those souls still exist there, watching, waiting, guiding. And sometimes they whisper through the dreams of artists, scientists, and visionaries who awaken in our time with ideas that seem far too advanced for their age. Perhaps they are echoes, or perhaps they are memories returning. Even today, the symbols of Atlantis are everywhere. In sacred geometry, in the compass rose, in the spiral of a seashell, in the pattern of galaxies themselves. The same ratios, the same frequencies, the same silent mathematics that the Atlanteans once lived by still hum quietly in the design of the universe. Maybe we've never really lost their wisdom. We've only forgotten how to see it. And yet the spirit of Atlantis carries both light and shadow. It reminds us of what happens when brilliance outpaces humility, when creation forgets balance. Every age faces its own version of Atlantis, moments when humanity reaches too far, moves too fast, and forgets to listen to the quiet rhythm of the earth. But that is why its story endures, not as a tragedy, but as a warning wrapped in wonder. Atlantis is the story of us, the rise, the fall, the dream of starting again. Some believe that the spirit of Atlantis has already begun to awaken, that each time a new generation seeks peace with nature, or looks beyond borders, or listens to the ocean with reverence instead of conquest, a faint glow returns to the deep, as if the city stirs, dreaming of a new dawn. 'Cause Atlantis was never truly destroyed, it was transformed, from city to symbol, from memory to myth, from myth to mirror. And maybe that is where it belongs, not in the sea, but in the human heart, waiting for the moment when we are ready to live as they once dreamed, in harmony with the world and with ourselves. The ocean sighs softly tonight, its waves whispering through time. If you close your eyes and listen, you might hear it, the faint hum of something ancient, something kind, something familiar. That is the spirit of Atlantis, not lost, not gone, just waiting to be remembered. The ocean is calm tonight. The stars shimmer like fragments of memory scattered across the dark, and somewhere beneath those waves, where silence has slept for thousands of years, something stirs, a pulse, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat awakening after a long, beautiful dream. They say that nothing truly disappears. Energy cannot be destroyed, only changed. And if that is true, then the light of Atlantis, the essence of all it was, has never truly gone. It has only waited, quietly, for the world to be ready once more. For centuries Atlantis was remembered as a warning, a tale of pride, of downfall, of human ambition that reached too far. But what if it was never meant to frighten us? What if it was meant to guide us? The old legends speak of a prophecy, that one day, when the world begins to forget its divisions and learns again the language of harmony, the light of Atlantis will return, not as a city rising from the sea, but as an awakening within humanity itself. Perhaps that day is closer than we think. You can see hints of it everywhere, in the way people search for meaning beyond machines, in the way they listen to the earth again, in the quiet rediscovery of peace over progress. It begins not with invention, but with stillness, with remembering that true power is balance, not control. The return of Atlantis is not a flood. It is a reflection, a moment when humankind remembers what it once knew, that everything is connected. The ancient Atlanteans lived in resonance with that truth. They built their world upon frequency, upon energy that flowed through stone, light, and thought. When they fell, that harmony shattered. But now, piece by piece, it hums again, through our music, our science, our collective yearning for unity. Some believe that deep meditation, the quiet alignment of mind and spirit, can awaken the old frequencies of Atlantis. They say that when you still your breath long enough, you can feel the vibration of the earth, the same tone that once powered the crystal towers. That tone has never vanished. It lives inside each of us, the last spark of a world that once shone brighter than gold. And maybe that's the real secret. Atlantis doesn't need to rise from the ocean because it already lives within us. Every act of kindness, every moment of balance, every heartbeat that chooses creation over destruction, that is the lost light returning. If you listen closely tonight, you can almost hear it, that low, resonant hum carried by the tide. It sounds like peace, like memory, like something ancient coming home. Perhaps the ocean has kept Atlantis not as punishment, but as protection, guarding its wisdom until we are ready to use it wisely. And maybe now, as humanity begins to remember, the sea will loosen its hold, not in waves or ruins, but in whispers, dreams, ideas, inventions that come to those who still listen to the silence beneath the noise. The Atlanteans once believed that light was the language of the soul, and that when every living being learned to speak in that light again, the earth itself would awaken. Maybe tonight, under this calm and infinite sky, you can feel it, a gentle stirring, a warmth behind the ribs, a memory that feels both strange and familiar. That is the return of the lost light. Not a city reborn, but a spirit remembered. Not the rise of stone, but the rise of awareness. Atlantis was never destroyed. It was only waiting for you to remember it. Before the first city, before the first written word, before history even had a name, there was a silence, a long ancient silence, filled only with the rhythm of wind and ocean and fire. It was a time we have forgotten, yet it may be the time that made us who we are. For centuries we believed that civilization began just 6,000 years ago, with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the slow march of mankind into reason and order. But beneath the dust of deserts and the waves of forgotten seas, something older sleeps, something that does not fit our textbooks. In the highlands of southern Africa lie thousands of circular stone ruins, scattered across the earth like constellations fallen from the sky. They stretch for miles across plains and valleys, older than the pyramids, older than the Ice Age itself. The locals call them Adam's calendar. Archaeologists call them impossible. When measured, each stone ring aligns perfectly with the movements of the stars, the solstices, the equinox, the path of the sun, not by chance, but by design. Whoever built them understood the heavens, in a way we thought only modern science could. Yet the dating suggests something staggering, 97,000 years old. At that time, according to everything we've been taught, humans were nothing more than hunters wandering the wild. No cities, no art, no understanding of astronomy, and yet, here they were, building monuments that spoke the language of the cosmos. How could this be? Who taught them to speak with the stars? Some say these ruins were made by early tribes guided by nature itself. Others believe they are remnants of a civilization, advanced, organized, and ancient beyond imagination, wiped clean from history. Imagine standing there at dawn, the cold air biting your skin, the sound of nothing but your own breath. And as the sun rises, its first light slips between two stones, striking a third, perfectly aligned. Not chaos, not chance, mathematics, intention. Every clue we uncover adds to the question, what if the beginning of history is not a beginning at all? What if it's the middle, the start of something reborn after being erased? There are stories, scattered across the world, of a time before time. The Sumerians called it the Age of the Gods. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time when divine beings walked the earth, and the elders of Africa tell of the first people, builders of sound and stone, whose voices could move the mountains. Myth, they say, but myths are memories that refuse to die. The deeper we dig, the more the earth resists, as if she's protecting her oldest secret. We find symbols, alignments, magnetic anomalies, all whispering that something once stood here long before we did. A civilization with knowledge that vanished like smoke before the storm of time. Maybe they destroyed themselves, maybe nature did it for them, or maybe, just maybe, they never vanished at all. Perhaps their memory flows quietly through our DNA, through the ancient pull we feel when we look up at the stars. That strange feeling of remembering something we never lived. Before history began, they were here, watching the skies, building with stone and sound, writing their story not in books, but in the earth itself. And as we stand in the ruins of their forgotten world, one question lingers. If this was the beginning of civilization, then what came before? When night falls on the ancient world and the stars open their eyes, the earth remembers. The wind carries the songs of those who once built not for kings, but for the cosmos. They were not ordinary people. They were the builders of the stars, across continents, from the sands of Africa to the frozen edges of the Andes. Their fingerprints can still be seen. Circles of stone that mirror the heavens, lines carved into the earth that point unerringly to Orion, to Sirius, to the Pleiades. It is as if they wanted to remind the future we knew where we came from. We have found them on every shore. In Africa, the ruins of Adam's calendar align with the Milky Way. In Egypt, the pyramids echo the pattern of Orion's belt. And in South America, the temples of Teotihuacan and Machu Picchu trace the same cosmic map, as though drawn from one invisible hand. 3 cultures, 3 worlds apart, yet one story written across the stars. Archaeologists say coincidence, but coincidence does not carve granite with millimetre precision. It does not stretch across oceans separated by tens of thousands of years. The builders of the stars, whoever they were, saw the sky as a reflection of themselves. They understood that to build on earth was to mirror heaven. Their monuments were not tombs, they were instruments measuring time, tracking the movements of suns, moons, and unseen constellations. Imagine them thousands of years before recorded history. No iron, no wheel, no written word. And yet they could measure the precession of the equinox. They could align stone with starlight over centuries. They could speak to the universe through geometry. What kind of mind could do that? Modern engineers admit some of these alignments would be nearly impossible without advanced tools. Yet they stand, flawless, unmoved by time, unbent by the Earth's shifting crust. It's as if the stones themselves were alive, obeying the whisper of the stars. We have always looked up, but maybe once, long ago, we understood what we were looking at. Some researchers believe these builders were part of a single global culture, connected before the oceans rose, before the flood myths were born. An ancient people who mapped the sky when the world was one, when the stars guided not sailors, but souls. And maybe that's why so many creation stories begin with the heavens. The gods descending from the sky, the knowledge of fire, of numbers, of sound, gifts that came not from below, but from above. Perhaps they were not gods at all. Perhaps they were simply humans who remembered more, who carried the wisdom of a lost world before time forgot its name. And through their monuments they tried to leave us a message. We were here. We watched the stars. We knew what you would forget, each alignment, each stone, each myth of gods and celestial fire, all part of a silent map that leads back to them. But where does it lead? Why did they carve the heavens into the earth, only to vanish without a trace? In every civilization that followed, fragments of their memory reappeared. The ziggurats, the temples, the sacred geometry. Echoes of a time when humans and the stars were one. We call them myths, but perhaps they were blueprints. Lessons left for a future that would once again search the skies and ask the same question. Who are we, and what have we forgotten? The ocean keeps secrets better than time. Beneath its dark weight lies the greatest archive of human history, one that speaks not with words, but with silence. For centuries we've walked the earth believing civilization began on land. But perhaps our story began beneath the waves. There are places the sea hides, ancient terraces, half-buried temples, and roads that lead nowhere. Ruins so old they mock the limits of our timelines. And yet they exist, carved, measured, deliberate. In the waters off the coast of Japan, divers discovered what they first thought was a natural rock formation. Massive stone steps descending into darkness. Columns, platforms, and passageways too precise to be random. They called it the Yonaguni Monument, and it may have stood above water over 10,000 years ago. Or longer. Who built it? And why has the ocean taken it back? Half a world away off the coast of India lies another mystery. Dwarka, the fabled city of Lord Krishna. Long believed to be legend, it was found beneath 70 feet of water, perfectly laid out in grids, streets, walls and temples. Sonar scans show patterns far too advanced for the Bronze Age. What if these were not isolated discoveries, but fragments of a world that once stretched across continents? A civilization erased not by war or time, but by the sea itself. The old myths all agree on one thing, the flood. From the Bible's Noah to Mesopotamia's Utnapishtim, from the Hindu Manu to the stories of the Maya, the earth drowned once. And in that drowning, an age ended. But what if the flood wasn't a single event? What if it was a cycle, a cleansing the planet remembers and repeats? Ice melts, the oceans rise, and history is swallowed whole. The 97,000-year-old civilization could have been the first to vanish, leaving behind only stone, the one thing the water could not completely erase. Archaeologists speak of submerged cities off Cuba, Malta, the Bahamas, and the coast of Egypt, geometric, deliberate, ancient. All share a strange alignment, as if once they belonged to a world that knew the stars and the sea as one. Could it be that these builders, the same who aligned their temples with Orion, also built beneath the sunken continents? If so, perhaps the ocean floor is not a grave, but a library. The more we look, the more we find, and the deeper we go, the older the ruins become. But still, no names, no bones, only echoes. Some say these were the cities of Atlantis or Lemuria, mythic lands that fell when pride and power grew too great. Others whisper they were not destroyed, but chosen, to begin again elsewhere, when the waters receded. When you stand by the shore and listen to the waves, there's a strange rhythm beneath the surface, like breathing, like memory. It's the same pulse our ancestors once heard before the world went silent. Maybe that's why the sea still calls to us, because deep beneath it, the bones of another age still dream, a forgotten city waiting to rise again, or to be remembered by those who dare to listen. There comes a moment in every age when the earth decides to begin again. When the sky grows dark, the mountains burn, and the sea remembers its power. The ancients called it judgment. The poets called it the flood. But we know it as the great forgetting. Imagine a world, vast, connected, alive with stone cities and star temples. A civilization that had mapped the heavens, understood the pulse of the earth, and walked in harmony with both. And then, one day, the sky broke. It began with fire from above. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas Impact Event, a comet or meteor that struck the planet with unimaginable force. But long before the scientists, the stories were already there. Of a serpent in the sky, a god's wrath, the day the stars fell. Ice melted, oceans rose, the ground shook for months, rain fell for generations, the earth bled, and with it history. Entire continents drowned, mountains cracked open, and those who survived scattered like ashes in the wind. Knowledge turned to whispers, language turned to myth. The people of that lost world, the builders, the dreamers, the astronomers, became legends. We remember them only as gods, but they were us, before we forgot. When the waters calmed and the fires died, the survivors began again, in caves, in small tribes, carrying only fragments of memory. They remembered how to plant, how to look at the stars, how to honour the cycles of the sun, but the great cities were gone, the instruments of stone and sound shattered or buried under miles of silt. And slowly the earth covered the evidence. Forests grew over temples, deserts swallowed cities, the sea closed its hands, and humanity awoke centuries later, alone, believing it was the first. We called our beginning civilization, we called it progress, but maybe it was recovery, a species remembering how to breathe after nearly drowning in its own forgotten past. Even now, traces of that ancient trauma live in every culture. The great flood of Noah, the sinking of Atlantis, the wrath of Shiva, the fall of the sky serpent, different tongues, same wound. But why did they all tell the same story? Why did every civilization remember a time before time and a catastrophe that ended it? Some believe it was punishment, others a cycle. But what if it was neither? What if the great forgetting wasn't destruction, but design? Maybe the Earth resets not to erase, but to evolve. Maybe every ending is an invitation for memory to be reborn in a new form, a new mind, a new age. And so the echoes of that ancient world linger, in myths, in symbols, in the geometry of temples we still cannot explain. They are the heartbeat of something that refuses to die, something waiting to be remembered. From the ashes of the forgotten came the birth of the gods, and the stories they left behind. When the floodwaters receded, when the fire finally died, and when the last echoes of thunder vanished into the mountains, the world was quiet again. But it was not empty. From the ashes of the old world, a few survived. Scattered, wounded, but alive, carrying fragments of knowledge too ancient to belong to their new beginnings. And when they walked among the people who rose after them, they were remembered as gods. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings of light who descended from the heavens and taught humanity the arts of civilization, writing, agriculture, the calendar of the stars. In Egypt, they were called the Netters, divine beings who walked the Nile long before the first pharaoh. In South America, the Inca told of Viracocha, the bearded god who rose from the sea to rebuild the world after a great flood. And in ancient India, they were known as the Devas, the shining ones who carried knowledge from a world destroyed. Different names, different lands, but one memory. Perhaps they were not gods at all. Perhaps they were the last survivors of the 97,000-year-old civilization, bearers of memory, of mathematics, of language and sound. To the tribes they met, they seemed divine, but they were simply human. Humans who remembered what others had forgotten. They rebuilt where they could, teaching stone, sky, and seed. Every temple that rose in their honour was not built for worship but remembrance, a monument to a time before the great forgetting. But the centuries blurred their image. The knowledge they carried became myth, and myth became religion. We began to speak of them not as teachers but as celestial beings, descended from stars or from heaven. Perhaps both were true. Perhaps they were the bridge between what we were and what we would become. Their knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and energy was passed down as stories of magic and miracles. Their symbols, the serpent, the winged sun, the sacred tree, appear in every ancient culture as if echoing the same source. Maybe these gods didn't want to be worshipped. Maybe they wanted to be remembered. But memory is fragile, and time is a cruel editor. Their teachings became riddles, their science became faith, and the truth slipped quietly between the cracks of time. Yet even now we feel them. In the architecture of temples, the rhythm of chants, the golden ratios hidden in art and sound. They live in the sacred geometry of the world itself, in the way we still look up at the stars, wondering where we came from. The memory of the gods is not about divinity, it's about origin. It's about who we once were, before history divided us, before we forgot we were one. And maybe that is why every civilization, no matter how distant or different, built toward the heavens, because deep down something inside us remembers the sky. But what did they know? What secrets of energy, of sounds, of creation did they carry that could shape stone like clay and speak with the pulse of the earth itself? There are things the ancients knew, things they could do, that we still can't explain. Temples that hum with perfect frequency, stones that defy the tools of their time, monuments that seem to breathe with the rhythm of the earth itself. This is not myth, this is the forbidden knowledge. When the survivors of the old world walked among the people of the new, they carried fragments of something powerful, a science so pure it bordered on the divine. It was not built on machines or metals, but on sound, vibration, and resonance. They believed, as the builders of the stars once did, that everything in existence is made of frequency, that to know the world you must know its song. And somehow they did. In Egypt, walls whisper with harmonic precision, each chamber tuned to a specific tone that vibrates through the body like memory. In the Andes, stones fit so tightly together, no blade can pass between them, not carved, but shaped through heat and sound. And in India, the temples still hum when you strike their pillars, as if the stone itself remembers music older than mankind. How did they do this? How did they bend matter with the grace of art and the precision of physics? Some believe they understood the hidden structure of sound and the resonance that binds reality, that their chants and instruments weren't spiritual performances, but mathematical tools, that the same frequencies that heal and lift the human mind could also move stone, alter weight, or awaken energy from the earth. It sounds like fantasy until you listen. Until you stand inside one of these ancient chambers, whisper a single note, and hear the walls answer back. Modern engineers have tried to recreate it, and failed. Archaeologists call it coincidence. But too many coincidences begin to sound like a pattern. Maybe this knowledge wasn't lost. Maybe it was sealed. Because power like that, the ability to harness the natural forces of the world, can build civilizations or destroy them. What if the 97,000-year-old civilization wasn't destroyed by the heavens, but by its own creation, a technology beyond understanding, turned against itself in the Great Forgetting? Many myths hint at it. The Sumerians speak of divine weapons that split mountains. The Vedic texts tell of celestial fire brighter than 1,000 suns, echoes of energy unleashed before its time. Perhaps that is why the survivors became the gods. Not because they were divine, but because they were the keepers of something humanity was not yet ready to hold again. And so they scattered their knowledge, in symbols, in architecture, in sound, hiding the pieces across the world like fragments of a song only the awakened could one day play again. Somewhere in that forgotten harmony lies the secret to who we were, the code that connects sound, stone, and soul, the ancient melody that shaped mountains, moved oceans, and gave rise to life itself. We are still trying to remember the song. But before we find it again, we must first follow another clue, the maps that should not exist. Maps that remember a world before the flood, drawn by hands that should have never known it. There are maps that should not exist, drawn centuries before we had telescopes, satellites, or the courage to cross the edge of the world. Maps that show coastlines buried beneath ice, and continents that no one had yet seen. These are the maps of the impossible. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis created a map unlike any the world had known. It depicted South America, Africa, and something else. A landmass at the bottom of the world, Antarctica, drawn with stunning accuracy and impossibly without ice. But Antarctica's icy crown has covered it for more than 6,000 years. So who mapped its naked shores, and when? Piri Reis himself claimed he used ancient source maps, documents far older than his own age, inherited from lost civilizations. He wrote that some of his sources dated back to the time of Alexander and beyond. But beyond how far? The precision of the coastlines, the proportional measurements of continents, even the curvature of the earths, all shown long before modern navigation. Someone, long before us, saw the planet from the sky. Someone who knew the world whole. The Piri Reis map is not alone. Other charts, like the Oronteus Phineas map of 1531 and the Bouaché map of the 18th century, also depict a southern continent, traced with vivises and mountains that match modern sonar images beneath Antarctica's ice. These cartographers didn't invent what they drew. They inherited it, copied it from older sources, sources that no longer exist, or perhaps no longer belong to this world. Could it be that the survivors of the 97,000-year-old civilization mapped the Earth as it once was, before the cataclysm, before the oceans rose? If they truly had global reach, then the world itself would have been their canvas. They might have travelled from pole to pole, charting not for conquest, but remembrance. Recording what they knew would soon be lost. What kind of knowledge does it take to map a continent you can't see? To measure the curvature of the planet before mathematics had names for it? To understand the Earth as a sphere, long before the sailors of later centuries dared to believe it? These are not the works of guesswork or chance, they are memories. Perhaps those who made them saw the world from above, not through technology as we know it, but through something older, more intuitive, a mastery of observation, energy, or even perspective that we can't yet comprehend. Every one of these maps carries a whisper, a reminder that someone once knew too much, too soon, and when their world fell, their knowledge drifted across the centuries like bottled messages on a cosmic tide. We've been finding those bottles ever since, and mistaking them for miracles. If these maps are the memory of a forgotten world, then the lines that trace their shores are not just borders, but instructions. Perhaps they were meant to lead us back to the truth of who first measured the Earth, and what they left waiting beneath the ice. But stone speaks louder than ink, and in the next chapter we follow the voices carved in rock, messages left by hands that refuse to be silenced. Stone does not speak in words, it remembers. When everything else is lost, when fire burns the parchment and oceans drown the cities, stone endures, and through it the ancients spoke. Every line carved, every mark etched, every spiral drawn, all carry the same unshakable message. We were here. Across the world, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of the Amazon, we find the same symbols repeating. The spiral, the serpent, the sun, the eye that sees in all directions, different lands, different languages, yet the same voice, as if one story was being told through 1,000 hands. Who are they trying to reach, us or the Earth itself? Some of these markings are so old they predate written language, by tens of thousands of years. They are not random art, they are mathematics, they are sound, they are memory carved into matter. Look closer at the petroglyphs in Australia, the Nazca lines of Peru, the carvings of Göbekli Tepe, and you'll see the same geometry hidden within them. Triangles, ratios, circles of perfect measure. A universal language that only the patient Earth could keep alive. It's as if these symbols were meant not to be read, but to be felt. Each one a vibration, a frequency of remembrance. The ancients didn't write books, they wrote resonance. And in that resonance lies their message. We are not alone in time. What if these carvings were not just records, but keys? Keys to activate something deeper, to awaken memory in the human spirit, to reconnect us to the vibration they once understood. Even now, archaeologists uncover entire walls covered in patterns that defy explanation. Circles within circles, stars within stones, and everywhere the same golden proportions that appear in seashells, galaxies, and the human body itself. Coincidence or design? Perhaps the 97,000-year-old civilization wasn't only trying to survive, perhaps they were trying to be heard. Knowing that their words would fade, they carved their language into the bones of the world, so that when we were ready, we'd hear their echo again. And maybe, just maybe, we already have. The more we uncover, the more familiar these symbols feel, as if we've seen them before in dreams, in meditation, in the quiet between thoughts. It's as though the memory of these shapes lives within us, waiting for recognition. Because maybe their greatest creation wasn't the temples or the monuments, it was us, humanity, a vessel for their memory, a continuation of their story. Every stone whispers the same truth, that time is not a straight line, that what was lost can return through remembrance, and that the past is still speaking, if we only learn how to listen. And as those whispers grow louder, the earth itself begins to stir, reminding us that history is not finished. The earth never truly forgets. It waits beneath stone and ice, beneath jungles and deserts. It keeps its secrets until the time is right to reveal them again. And now, that time is beginning. Across the planet, the past is surfacing. Satellite scans reveal buried cities beneath the sands of Egypt and the Amazon. Sonar maps find megalithic walls deep below the oceans, and ancient DNA links tribes across continents once thought isolated by impossible distance. Science is beginning to whisper the same story myth has sung for millennia, a story that stretches back, farther than we ever dared to believe. For thousands of years, we told ourselves civilization began just 6 millennia ago, but now the evidence speaks louder, from Göbekli Tepe's temples that predate history to tools buried under volcanic ash older than humanity's supposed dawn. Each discovery pushes the horizon further back, and with it, a quiet realization takes root. We are not the first. In laboratories and excavation sites, scientists run their tests again and again, finding patterns that defy explanation. Stone that seems to have been melted, not carved. Mathematics encoded in ruins predating all known cultures, and alignments that match the stars as they appeared, not 1,000 years ago, but tens of thousands. Every clue is a spark, every spark a reminder. Perhaps this is not discovery, but remembrance. The ancients always said that one day when humanity was ready, the earth would reveal what she had hidden, that the stones would speak again, and the skies would show their mirrors once more. And now, as we scan the heavens and the ground beneath our feet, we are beginning to see the reflection. The same geometry that built their temples now appears in our technology, in the spiral of DNA, in the rhythm of sound waves and galaxies. It's as if the universe is speaking in the same language the ancients left behind, and we're finally learning how to listen. Some say it's coincidence, others say it's destiny, but maybe it's neither. Maybe it's the circle, completing itself, the long cycle of forgetting and remembering that defines every age. We are not inventing the future. We are recalling it, piece by piece, layer by layer. The blueprint of a forgotten civilization is being rewritten in our own time. And perhaps that's what they wanted. Perhaps the builders of the stars knew that one day we'd rise again, reach for the sky as they once did, and feel the same ache of memory, the same question echoing through eternity. Have we been here before? The ruins, the myths, the alignments, they are not endings, they are beginnings, repeating. The past has not returned to haunt us. It has come back to guide us, because soon the veil between what was and what will be will open once more. And when it does, we'll remember not just what they built, but why they vanished.